What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we are going to be talking about all things modding regarding DeepRockGalactic. Mods are a pretty big part of a lot of online gaming, and for DeepRockGalactic specifically, it is a very fun way to add some interesting flair and extra little things that you can do to the game. When first getting into modding, it can be a little bit intimidating or confusing to understand how it works, but once you get the hang of it, especially since DeepRock makes it very easy to use, you can mod your game in many different ways. So for this video, I'm going to go through the basics as to how modding works, as well as the different types of mods that exist in the game, how you're able to apply those mods specifically to the Steam version of the game, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to go through all the mods that I personally use when I play, so you can get an idea as to how these mods can affect gameplay in certain ways. So if you guys are ready, let's get into the video and talk about all things that have to do with mods in DeepRockGalactic. So first, let's talk about what exactly mods are. In DeepRockGalactic and in many other games that are out there, mods basically exist as something that is made by the players that can add or change certain aspects of the game in various different ways. There could be mods that are relatively subtle and don't really do much, to absolutely insane and wild types of mods that are out there. You can have very simple quality of life mods that just give you a little bit more information or clean up certain things, to very extreme mods that can add things like new weapons, new enemies, and all types of other stuff. In the case of DeepRockGalactic, mods can be broken down to three main categories: verified, approved, and sandbox. I'm actually going to talk about sandbox mods first because they're probably the most extreme and the ones that require the most changing. Sandbox mods are essentially mods that completely change the core aspect of the game entirely. They warp the game in very wild ways, from things like new weapons, to new enemies, to custom overclocks, to increased chances of finding machine events and cargo crates. Very game-breaking mods that can make the game a lot easier in certain ways. So because of this, whenever you use a sandbox mod, you have to have a separate save file that is different from the one that you normally use in-game. Because sometimes these mods can make it very easy for you to level up, and that wouldn't necessarily be very fair. If you were using mods to just power level faster than other people, that wouldn't really be too fair, so you have to use a separate save file. And there are some really crazy sandbox mods, like being able to just spawn anything anywhere, to doubling the maximum amount of ammo that you have, to making it so that way every class can use every weapon no matter what, or giving you just new perks to use. There are a ton of sandbox mods that you can go through that can definitely change the way you play. When it comes to the other two categories, first we have verified mods, which is what a majority of the mods in DeepRockGalactic are. Basically what verified mods are is, first, they're mods that you're able to use on your normal save, so you don't have to set up a completely separate save file, which means that they won't impact actual gameplay. Typically what verified mods are things that just make things a little bit easier, or just add some quality of life improvements to your gameplay overall. This can be things like making the secondary objectives a bit brighter so it's easier for you to see, or adding actual ammo percentages so that way you know exactly how much ammo you have left for your weapon and you don't have to guess. Even just some visual changes, or just things that make it a little bit easier for you to function. Another thing about verified mods is that they only affect the person who actually installs them. So for example, if you have the platform preview placement mod, which is one that I personally have, it allows you to see a preview of your platforms when you are aiming them. Now, you are the only person who is able to see these previews, so if somebody else is in your lobby that's playing engineer, for example, they won't be able to see the previews of their particular platforms. If you want mods that everybody can enjoy together, then that is where the approved section comes into play. Approved mods are similar to verified mods, where they don't necessarily change too much of the core gameplay in most cases. Sometimes they can go on the edge of changing gameplay a lot, but the big thing about approved mods is everybody needs to have the mod installed in order for the lobby to function. Basically, if you're joining somebody's lobby who has approved mods installed, you will be prompted to install the mods if you do not already have them installed. These can be things like adding more players to the lobby, adding ways to control the swarms that you're going to be interacting, personal mini-mules for everybody. These are mods that will change the way you play a little bit, but still not to as egregious as a degree as sandbox mods do. There are even mod packs that add completely new mission types, enemies, and all types of other things added in that can really help change up gameplay a lot. Now, when it comes to actually installing and using these mods, thankfully DRG makes it very simple. I will say in this particular section, I'm going to be specifically talking about modding the Steam version of the game. Unfortunately, console players, it is impossible to mod the game, at least through traditional means. I have heard people say that you can mod the Xbox and PlayStation versions, but usually that requires you to physically mod the console itself, or to really mess with the Windows files if you're playing the Microsoft version on PC. So I would highly recommend not doing that, as you can mess up your save files in really bad ways. So unfortunately for this section, I'm only going to be talking about people playing on the Steam version. That being said, when talking about the Steam version of the game, they actually make it very simple for you to mod the game. If you're in game, all you have to do is press escape and then go over to the modding panel. This is the easiest way for you to do modding, and for you it's going to look completely empty, but for me, since I have a lot of mods installed, that's what you're seeing. And then all you have to do is go down here to where it says manage mods. Once you click on this, a Steam page pop-up will come up bringing you to the mod.io page for DeepRockGalactic. Now thankfully, getting involved with mod.io is very easy because it just uses your Steam account, so you really don't have to do much work. And from here, you can basically browse and look at any other type of mods that you can think of and look at the ones that seem interesting to you, and just all you have to do is hit subscribe on the ones that you want, and then it will automatically be applied. So for example, if I wanted to say subscribe to this one that says massive content revise, which is actually one that my viewers have told me about, all I have to do is press subscribe. Means I'm now subscribed to the mod, which means it will be applied. And then once I leave the page, you can see these are all the mods that I currently have installed. And if I scroll up, it says I need to apply changes to complete the install. So if I just hit apply down here, prompt comes up saying you need to restart the space rig because you're adding a new mod. And then once you get loaded in, the mod will be applied. And that's the basic premise of applying mods. And when you're looking at the actual mod menu, you can see the types of mods that you have installed, the category that they're under, and whether or not they are currently active. If you look on the left, you'll see either verified or approved or sandbox, which will tell you the category that they're in. And then on the right, you can see the activity slot, which lets you know if the mod is currently active or not, or if it is disabled for whatever reason. And again, it's really that easy for you to install mods in DeepRock, and then just make sure you use them at your own risk, because some of them can be a little bit crazy and can change some very core things about the game. So now with all that out of the way, I figured I might as well go through all the mods that I use for DeepRockGalactic, because some people have asked in the past to know what particular mods I like to use whenever I'm streaming or looking at videos, so I figured now's a good time to just go through all the mods that I personally use. Note that pretty much all the mods that I use are verified or in some cases approved mods. The only one that comes to mind that I use that is Sandbox is Sandbox Utilities. This is basically what I use in a lot of my videos that you guys will see, where I'm in that big blank empty room. And this is essentially just an area that you can go into and experiment and practice with different weapons, try out different loadouts. You can spawn in various enemies, refill yourself on health and ammo, make yourself invulnerable so you can just sort of test weaponry and see if you like certain builds. And it's actually not a bad mod to use if you do want to practice. You just have to make sure that you turn it off when you want to play normally, because since it is a sandbox mod, you will have to use a different save file. Aside from that, pretty much everything I use is verified. And one of the first mods that I use is, of course, the mod hub. This isn't necessarily a mod in and of itself. It is just a way for you to condense and organize a lot of the mods that you already have installed, and it makes it very easy for you to manage them and know how they all work. So this is more of a mod organizer than an actual mod itself. As for the rest of the mods that I like to use, the first one is Brighter Objects. This just makes it so that way secondary objectives, as well as other types of primary objectives, any sort of resource or mineral that you can come across is made brighter, so it's easier for you to see, so it's not lost in the darkness. This is just a nice quality of life that just makes it easier for me to see things. Then next up, we have Weapon Heat Crosshair. This is a very useful mod for any of the weapons that use a heat system. Basically, as you are firing it, on top of the actual indicators that are on the weapon itself, you will see this bar filling up in the very center of the screen right around your reticle, and it will let you know specifically when the weapon is going to overheat. And this just makes it so much easier for you to keep track of your weapon's heat, because you have a much better and more clear indication of when your weapon will actually overheat. Then another one that I alluded to earlier is the Platform Placement Preview, which is a fun alliteration to say. This just gives you a little ghost image of your platform wherever you're aiming at that will let you know roughly where it's going to land. There are some times where the angle might be a little bit off, but for the most part, you can trust that this is going to help you know where your platforms are going to be if you are playing on the Engineer, and it's very, very useful. Next up, we have Ammo Percentages Indicator. This gives you the ability to actually have a percent indicator of how much ammo you have left. This is nice because I always felt that the built-in game ammo indicator with the 4 blocks was always a little bit odd. It seemed a little bit subjective when you were actually going to be running out of ammo, so actually knowing what true percentage you have is always nice. So this just gives you a little bit better understanding as to when to hit the resupply or when you don't necessarily need it. Another one I use is Health and Shield Numbers. This one isn't necessarily required. It's just really nice for me personally to know how much of my health and shields are actually down, so I know roughly how much red sugar I need to get. as well as just knowing if my shield or health increasing upgrades are actually applying properly. Another one that people ask about a lot is damage text. This one literally is very simple. It just adds the floating damage numbers whenever you hit enemies with projectiles or damage, very similar to other types of games like Borderlands or things of the like, and it just lets you know how much damage you're actually doing. It gives you a good idea on how to calculate the overall DPS that you're able to dish out, plus it's very satisfying to just see those damage numbers pop up. Then I have Better Explosion Range Indicator. This is specifically for the Driller's C4, and it allows you to not only understand better as to how big the explosion is going to be for the C4, but also gives you the ability to customize it and to be able to set up different colors or themes for the explosive indicator itself, which is very nice. Next up, we have Modified Gunner Shield Effect. This just changes the way that the shield effect is on the gunner, makes it a little bit more sci-fi, a little bit cleaner, and in my opinion, a lot cooler than the default game design. Again, this one isn't really necessary, it's just incredibly cool. Then, similar to the brighter objects, I have Steve and Bot Better Visibility. This just makes it a little bit easier for you to see and keep track of either Steve if you have the Beastmaster perk, or your robot if you are able to hack one on a robot mission. It just gives you the ability to keep track of them a little bit better. The next up, we have probably one of the most useful ones out of the entire list, which is Combined Resources. Essentially what this is it's an indicator on the very bottom of your screen that lets you know how much of each individual resource your entire team has, as well as how much you might need to complete the initial objective. This lets you know who has what on your team and whether or not you need to continue looking for a particular resource, or if your team has enough to be able to do whatever you need to do. So for example, if all of your teammates are hoarding a bunch of nitro, but you have none of it deposited, you can see that you have a ton of nitro banked up, and that if everybody just deposits, you will be able to call in 1 or 2 resupplies, which can be very useful. It also lets you know who is hoarding all the resources, and if you're missing that one Apoca Bloom, you know that somebody has it, they just haven't deposited yet, so it lets you know whenever you are not the problem when it comes to depositing resources. Along the same lines, I also have Live Mission Stat Tracker Plus. This is another one that isn't necessarily super useful, but it can be for people who like to understand how well they do. This allows you to keep track of your total eliminations, your mined minerals, your revives, and your downs throughout the course of the entire mission, instead of just seeing them at the very end of the stat screens. And you can customize the position, where it is, where you want to put it. It's all very nice. Next up, we have Status Effect Duration Indicator. This is another mod that gives you some more information. Specifically, this lets you know how long individual status effects are going to be affecting you for. Now, this can be negative effects like being stunned or being poisoned, but it can also be positive effects, like it lets you know how long Iron Will lasts for. It also lets you know how long your dash effect lasts for. So this can actually give you some better information as to how long you have to take advantage of a certain positive effect as well. Another one that isn't super necessary but can be very nice is Fast Forging. This basically just takes away the animation for forging every single time and just makes it so that way when you select something, it automatically forges, and you don't have to go through the long animation of your dwarf hitting the hammer. It can be just very nice and saves a good amount of time. Next up, another one that is specific to the engineer is Better Lock Indicator. I showed this one off on a video not too long ago, but basically this is specifically for the Lock 1 Smart Rifle, and it lets you know when you need to release the locks if you're using a specific overclock, such as, for example, explosive chemical rounds or the Executioner. And it does this by causing the lock indicator to turn green when it is the prime time to release. That way you get the full effect of either overclock that you are using. It's very useful if you're somebody who is just getting used to the Lock 1 Smart Rifle, and if you just got one of these overclocks and you're not really sure how to use it, this is a very good mod to learn with it. Another nice quality of life one is Better Spectator. This kind of adds a little bit more of a cinematic style to the spectator mode. It makes the camera movements a little bit nicer. Again, it's not super necessary, but I like it either way. Next up, we have Refinery Pipe Quality of Life. This is specifically for the on-site refining missions, and it makes it so that way when you're placing down the pipelines, you get a visual indication when you are at the optimal length. That way you're not putting down these frivolous pipes that aren't necessarily long enough. And it also allows you to color coordinate your pipes, so that way you know which one's which based on just color, which can be pretty nice. Again, this is a very useful mod to have if you're somebody who gets confused on-site refining missions as to which pipeline is which. Then we have shield expiration colors. This makes it so that way as the gunner's shield is going down in duration, the color will actually change to showcase how much time you have left before it expires. When you first put it down, it obviously starts off with the green, but then as it goes further and further down, it will go to yellow and then eventually red, letting you know it is about to expire. It's very good for letting you know exactly how much time you have left in your shield in order to take advantage of it, which is very nice. Another gunner-specific one, we have Dynamic Cylinder Swap. This is specifically for the Bulldog Heavy Revolver. This makes it so that way whatever overclock you are using that increases ammo capacity, the cylinder of the weapon will actually change accordingly. So if you're using elephant rounds, the cylinder will actually only have 3 shots, and if you're using 6-shooter, it will actually have 6 shots. So it's just a nice little visual change. Then we have Where's Dottie's Head? This one makes it so that way when you're on an escort mission, Dottie's head will have a little bit of a white outline around it. That way you can find it very easily so you can take her back. Again, not super necessary, but it's still a good quality of life one. And then the last 2 mods I want to talk about that I have are probably the 2 most important mods in my entire library. First, we have Diacell cargo crate batteries. This changes the cargo crate batteries from the normal boring design that they have in the game to Diacell batteries. Definitely not Duracell batteries. There is no relation to them whatsoever. Shut up. They do not look like anything that exists in reality, and it just makes it all the more funnier to find these things out in the caves. And then the last mod in my arsenal, which is by far the most important, is the pickaxe bonk sound effect. This makes it so that way whenever you power attack with your pickaxe, it makes the trademark famous bonk sound effect. Bam! Yeah! Absolutely necessary for anybody who wants to do any sort of high-end capable content in the caves, and is by far my favorite and most important mod in the entire library. Well, hopefully that answered the questions for some of you out there in terms of how to install mods as well as what they can do, as well as some of the mods that I like to use. I know people have asked a lot through streams or video comments what mods I'm using to do what, and hopefully you have a little bit of a better understanding as to how to use mods now. Again, mod responsibly, make sure you're using proper mods, and if you're using sandbox mods, understand that you are going to be needing a different save file. As long as you keep that in mind, mods can be a very fun and very effective way to improve and increase your effectiveness in DeepRockGalactic, while also adding those funny moments that you wouldn't necessarily expect. Anyway, I hope you guys found this video informative and entertaining. If you did, please be sure to let me know by hitting that like button and consider becoming a member and subscribing today, as it really helps me out a lot. Rocket Stone Miners, I will see you in the next video.